ladders. There are some people that make their way up the hill, and then all of a sudden they get down a sliding board and get dropped off to the beginning again. They had some sort of failure. They had to start over. There's some people that think that they know it all. They go to the know-it-all hotel and they hang out and they kind of get stuck there and they never really take action because they never really learn what they really need to do to be successful. They just think they know what to do, and as a result, they're stuck at the bottom of the hill, not able to get to success. Then you have people that try to lie and cheat their way to success, and they think it's a shortcut. They think they don't have to climb the hill. So they end up being dropped back down. There's always a secret chute and ladder there. We want to make sure that we're building with integrity, right? There are no shortcuts. It all comes down to following the system, but it goes deeper than that. So I want you to think about, if you haven't had the success that you've wanted so far, why not? What is holding you back? And oftentimes when I coach people that are struggling with this, we find out there's a mindset issue. There's a belief issue. And I'm not talking about belief in the business, right? A lot of times when we go to our basic 5 trainings, we hear people talk about attitude and knowledge, and a lot of the attitude and knowledge segments cover learning about the business. To me, the attitude and knowledge has to be about you and your own beliefs and your own limitations and what holds you back, because as I mentioned earlier today, a lot of what we do involves personal development. Some of us are afraid of failure, and we don't take any action because we're afraid we'll fail. I think more of us are afraid of success. They're not quite sure what it looks like. It doesn't quite fit their personality. They may not believe that they're worthy of achieving it, and this is all at the unconscious level. They don't understand it. But I'm going to tell you right now, whether we're talking about you or whether you're talking about team members, you are going to deal with people in this business that have all the potential to succeed, but they sabotage themselves without even realizing it. And many of them will quit before they should have because they were so close. You ever see the pictures about 3 feet from gold? Somebody's been digging and digging and digging and digging and digging and digging, and they give up, and the gold was just on the other side of the wall. Why does that happen? Well, let's talk about where some of our mindsets come from, because a lot of people are never taught this. Actually, I think more of you know how to operate your cell phone than many of you know about how to operate your mind and how to control your own beliefs. Isn't that true? Right? We don't know how it works. But what I want you to think about is if you think of this picture of the iceberg, right? The smallest part of the iceberg is what's above the surface. What's below the surface is what's dangerous. It was what was below the surface that caused the Titanic to sink. They couldn't see that. Well, our mind is really broken up. Like Simon Sinek said yesterday, he talked about the mind and how our mind can control so much of what we do. Well, we have our conscious mind. That's the part we're aware of. Those are the thoughts that we are aware of happening, going on. Those are the thoughts when we think about setting a goal. We usually think about it with our conscious mind. But the vast majority of our mental capacity happens in the unconscious mind that we're not aware of. We actually operate on these mental programs, and I know this might sound a little weird to you guys, but we operate on these mental programs that govern everything that we do. So let me give you some examples of this. It's kind of like a photographic mind. And your mind remembers everything. Have any of you seen the movie Evan, which one is it? It's Jim Carrey as God. No, Morgan Freeman is God. Jim Carrey. Bruce Almighty. I want to say Evan Almighty. It wasn't that. Bruce Almighty. Did you see the part where he goes to visit Morgan Freeman? And he opens up the filing cabinet. And when he opens up the filing cabinet's drawer shoots him across the room because it's like a mile long. And every experience he's ever had, every thought that he's ever had is stored in that filing cabinet of the mind. It's kind of like what happens with our unconscious mind. Every experience you've ever had is in your unconscious mind. You're just not aware of it. But if I asked you to think about what happened on your 16th birthday, and you sat and you thought about it and you got quiet, and we got you thinking about it, you could probably tap in and go back and find that file. And you could probably remember exactly what happened. And then if somebody showed you even one picture that refreshed your memory, You could probably remember conversations that happened on that day. You could remember tastes from that day. You could remember smells from that day. You could remember feelings from that day. You guys know what I'm talking about? That happens a lot about things that are traumatic or things that we're really happy about. And as a result of that, our unconscious mind stores all of these mental programs that we're not aware of, but they impact our behavior on a daily basis. These thoughts you're not aware of, but they are controlling you. What's crazy about this is we achieve most of our mental programs by the time we are 9 to 11 years old. Which means right now, no matter how old you are, it is almost as if the 9-year-old version of you is sitting in this seat right now, and that 9-year-old version is going to determine whether you are going to do what it takes or not to be successful in this business. But here's what's crazy. How smart were you at 9 years old? Were you able to tell when somebody was saying something about you, whether it was true or not? Probably not. Let me give you an example from my own childhood. I was just talking about this on Facebook with a friend the other day who went to elementary school with me. Because I was preparing for this segment, and I was thinking about where some of my own limiting beliefs come from. And it dawned on me. You see, I'm one of those people that my grandmother was very, very social. She was in card clubs, she was in bowling. I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and she was really good friends with the secretary at my school. Now, this woman's name was Nancy. I remembered her name was Nancy, but I could not remember her last name. Well, every time my grandmother and Nancy would get together, which was about 3 times per week, Nancy would say to my grandmother, she has so much potential if we could just get her to not be so social and to finish the things she starts. So I heard this over and over and over. And you know what happened? The scared little 9-year-old me that heard that over and over and over took that on as a mental program, and it became a part of my identity. This happens on the unconscious level. Didn't know this until years later. Because what started happening when I started my business, I shared with you the other day, my first 2 weeks in the business, I sponsored 8 people. Started getting success very quickly. All of a sudden, I would find myself not doing follow-ups, not returning people's phone calls, canceling meetings, making excuses. Does this sound familiar? I didn't know why. I'd get an appointment, I'd be super excited about it, I'd want to move forward, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, something would come up. Okay? Why did something come up? Because success was not a part of my identity. It didn't fit my view of myself, so I would sabotage myself. Now, Nancy did not do this on purpose. Nancy was just dealing with her own scared 9-year-old girl things, even though she was in her 50s or 60s, but she was somebody I looked up to. And when I heard it from her over and over again, it became ingrained in me. Right? Here's the funny part about this. So I'm thinking about this the other day, and I'm like, what is Nancy's last name? So I go on Facebook, and I message the one friend that I still talk to, who I went to preschool and elementary school and high school with, all in 3 different sections of our town. And I message her, and I'm like, do you remember the secretary of our elementary school's name? And she immediately responds back, yeah, and she gives me her name and says she lived with her daughter, she was kind of mean, and she starts rattling up all this stuff, right? So then she responds with the next message, what made you think about her? So I write back and I say, well, I'm preparing this lesson for one of the classes that I teach, and it's on mindset and mental programming. And I know that a lot of my limiting beliefs came from her constantly telling my grandmother that I had so much potential if I would only stop being social and if I would finish the things I started. And she writes back, and I quote, whoa, damn. She goes, I understand now why I'm operating from these I don't feel like I belong type programs. Now, she and I never talked about this before, but here we have this same woman that had the same impact on us. Now, we could be mad about it, or we could look at her as a scared 9-year-old girl who was also dealing with her own stuff from when she was growing up. Here she was in her 60s living with her daughter, right? Her life wasn't peaches and cream, but just by her talking about things, she said things that were not true, and whether they were true or not didn't matter. We adopted them as programs. And now my friend Jane has been looking through a lens of she doesn't belong her entire life. I've been looking through this lens of, you have so much potential if you would just finish the things you start and stop being social. That becomes a part of your identity. That becomes a part of your limiting belief that you can't do something, right? So here's the part. Programs are great. Programs are great because they allow us to do things on automatic pilot, like drive. Do you guys remember how difficult it was when you were learning how to drive? All the different things you need to think about at one time. Where do you put your foot? Where do you put your hand? Where do you look? How do you turn on the turn signal? Do you remember that, how difficult it was? But once you learn it, now it's almost scary how you drive on autopilot and you leave someplace and you get to your destination and you think, how did I get here? It's become so automated. Mental programming is beautiful because it allows us to be able to get through life without having to relearn everything every day. Imagine if you had to relearn to walk every day. Imagine if you had to relearn how to use a fork every day, or how to talk every day, or what your language is every day. Right? Mental programming works because it puts us on automatic pilot. But the bad part is sometimes these mental programs lead us to these limitations, these fears, these phobias. Let me give you an example of a funny one. So my husband's family is from Pennsylvania, and his grandmother had a pool. She didn't really like to swim. And he used to go stay with her at the end of the summer, and he would usually be there right around the Labor Day weekend, right? Well, she didn't want to get in the pool. And when he was a little kid, as a little kid, you can't get in the pool by yourself. You need somebody to get in with you. Well, she used to say to him things like, you can't swim after Labor Day, you'll get sick. Well, he heard that so much. As we got older, I'd want to go swimming. We'd be on vacation in Florida in February, and I'd want to swim, and my husband would say, you can't go swimming after Labor Day, you get sick. Now, is there any logic to that whatsoever? No, but I will tell you what. You want to talk about the power of the human mind? I kid you not. My husband goes swimming after Labor Day, he gets sick. Right? We both can go swimming at the same time in the same water. He gets sick, I don't. We had to work on that program. Programs can be changed. This is my point of this lecture. You can change it, but first you have to identify that they exist. Right? So here's what's crazy. Once you have a program, it becomes like a lens that you view the world through. Whether you like it or not, whether you've admitted it or not, whether you're aware of it or not, you are viewing the world through lenses right now, many of them. Some of you are looking through I'm not good enough lenses. Some of you are looking at through I'm awesome lenses. Some of you are looking at through I don't deserve success. Some of you are like, I totally deserve success. It all depends on the influence of you, who you had growing up, and did they build you up or did they tear you down? And that's not their fault. They were just little kids too. Might be in a 50-year-old body, 9-year-old mind. Okay? So I want you to think about what filters might you have that you're viewing the world through that could limit you to being successful, because this is the difference between those that are successful and those that aren't with nutraMetrix. The people that are successful are willing to change the lenses. They're willing to work on it. They're willing to listen to audios and read books about growth and personal development and transformation, and the others play the victim to their excuses, right? So I want you to think about this. If you're sitting talking to somebody about nutraMetrix and you're constantly approaching it as this is hard, I don't know if I can do this, I don't know if I can do this, guess what? Whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way you're right. We've seen that all over the place. We don't often understand why. It resonates with us. I don't think there's one person that doesn't resonate with why. It's a universal truth. When you hear universal truths, you know it, right? So you need to think about, well, how do I get past my limiting beliefs? Well, figure out what it is and then move past it. I'll give you my example. Again, I'm an open book. I figured out that when I would set goals for myself and that were about me, I didn't work towards them because I had a filter that I wasn't worthy of achieving them. I wasn't deserving of them. So when it came time to call and book appointments or set appointments, I wouldn't pick up the phone. Who would it hurt? Right? It hurt me, so what? When you don't feel like you're worthy, Does it matter if you hurt yourself? Right? So I had to learn that in order for me to actually take action and pick up the phone, I had to make the goals be about other people because I didn't want to see other people hurt. So I had to look at it from, if I don't pick up the phone, how many people am I not helping that I could have been? And then all of a sudden I would take action. So you need to think about, how can you motivate yourself to get beyond your limiting beliefs? It's about setting goals bigger than you. If you haven't read the book, Psycho-Cybernetics, I'm going to recommend that you read it or pick up the new one called The New Psycho-Cybernetics. When I say new, I mean it's written within the last 20 years, not 100 years ago. The original was written by Maxwell Maltz, I think, in the 1920s. And then Dan Kennedy and Maxwell Maltz worked together to update it later on with more current examples. But what he talks about is how you can create a model of success in your mind that is based on cybernetic principles. Cybernetic principles are like, think about it in terms of a heat-seeking missile, all right? When a heat-seeking missile is locked onto a target, it is going to move and bend and go around obstacles until it gets to that target. Nothing is going to get in its way. If you create goals that inspire you, that light you up, that get you all excited because it's bigger than about you, you can turn your mind into a heat-seeking missile that locks onto that goal. And the beautiful thing about it is you have this success mechanism and a failure mechanism that tells you whether you're on the right track or not. See, a lot of people are afraid of failure. Failure is a part of the process to get to success. It's no different than if you program an address into your GPS and you make a wrong turn. The annoying voice on the GPS starts saying, make a U-turn, make a U-turn, make a U-turn, make a U-turn, until you listen, right? Well, if you're on your path to success and you keep failing and you keep failing and you keep failing and you don't alter the course, you're not going to get to your destination. The failure is the indication that you are on the wrong course, right? Failure is a part of the path to success. So I suggest you buy that book from your portal. If you're struggling with trying to figure out what could my limitations be and how do I get beyond them, I would recommend that book. Then I want you to think about your goals. See, right now, you've set goals for yourself that probably aren't as inspiring as they could be. Because when you set them with the limited lens, right? How many times have you sat down with somebody with the Getting Started Guide and you ask them, well, what type of income do you want to generate with your business? And they say something like, an extra $300 a month. Now, we can easily give them an extra $300 a month, right? But is that an exciting enough goal to get them past the obstacles when they get a couple of no's? No. But if all of a sudden you get them excited about a goal that rocks them to their core, you've heard the cliche, if your why doesn't make you cry, you need a bigger why, right? The goal needs to be so big that you feel it in your heart, that you feel it in your core. It can't just be about, I don't know, a prettier house or a better car, because you don't really need that. Right? It'd be nice to have, but you don't really need it. But what if the goal was about impacting the lives of tens of thousands of people? And what if the goal was so big that it inspired you to jump out of bed in the morning and take action? Well, then you can get a lot more excited about it, and then it blows past the limiting beliefs, because now it's not just about you. Now, some of you might still be thinking, I don't know if I could do that. Well, this is when you work on yourself on a daily basis, and you do affirmations, and you create a vision board, and you create a goal board, and you keep focusing on it until it feels real to you, like Amy Cuddy talked about this morning. She talked about faking it till you become it. I want to make sure that I clarify that with you. Faking it till you become it does not mean going out and like renting an expensive car that you can't afford and taking pictures of a big house and a picture of you in front of it. That's not what it's about. Or dressing above your steps, and you need to do this, and then you do this, and you do this, and he shows people trying to jump up and climb up above it, and they can't get to it, right? That's not even what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you don't plan out the goal for every appointment or every interaction that you have with people, It's really easy to get off course. So I want you to think about, before you pick up the phone and make a call, create a goal in your head of the outcome of that call. Visualize the outcome in your head of the result of the call. If your goal is to book an appointment, visualize yourself writing the appointment in your appointment book before you even pick up the phone. That can make all the difference. As silly as it sounds, doing something as simple as that speaks it into existence, right? So I want you to think about this. What is the goal? Of course, the big picture goal. What do you want? What kind of skills do you want to have? Who do you want to be? Part of your big goal should be about who do you want to become. You're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. All that needs to happen is you need to uncover who you really are without the lenses telling you lies. Because somebody has told you that you're not worthy. They were lying. Somebody has told you that you are not deserving. They were lying. Take those goggles off. Replace them with other ones, because everybody can do this. Okay? How much BV do you want to create? How much money do you need to create the lifestyle you want? Then take action towards it. When do you want it? What are you willing to overcome to get there? Create your goal statement, create your action plan. Break it down per day. If you don't do that, it's just not magically going to happen in 2 years. You need to have a path to get you there. Okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about how that happens before we go on to the next slides. It's not easy, but you need to be committed, and I can guarantee you the people who are successful are already doing this. They're reading books on personal development. They're listening to audios. We hear about it in the Basic Five, but some people just miss the mark in the way they teach the Basic Five. They think it's all about the business. Developing attitude and knowledge is the first step of the Basic Five for a reason. Attitude is extremely important. It's extremely contagious, but it's also temporary, right? People can listen to motivational tapes. They can go and they can get all excited and say, I'm going to do this today. And then something negative happens. Their mood changes a little bit and they forget. So they might start off by doing positive affirmations and trying to reprogram their mind and trying to get past all their self-limiting beliefs. But if they don't schedule it into their day, it's kind of like, who was it that said motivation is kind of like bathing? You need to do it every day, right? You can't just bathe once and then think you're clean for the rest of your life. We need to wash off all the layers of junk that has been put upon you by other people, so that you can live the life that you're meant to lead, and you can help the people you're meant to help. Because all of us were put here with a purpose and a mission and a song, right? And many times life gets in the way of that. This is the perfect vehicle to help you get there, if you only believe you can. JR talks about it from the stage. He talks about the system is perfect if you follow it, but do you believe you can? I remember the first time that I went to an event. Those of you that have been around for a while, you know we used to do a lot of recognition at the events, and you can probably, if you've ever been to an event where there's recognition, you can probably relate to seeing people walk across the stage and talk about the challenges that they overcame. And you might sit there and well up with tears, and you might feel pride for them and happy for them, but how do you feel about yourself? Do you ever sit there and think, I can do that, I'm going to be like them? Or do you hear yourself saying, I wish I could be like them, but I can't because, and then you start listing all the excuses. It's time to drop the excuses. It's time to help your people drop their excuses, and sometimes we need to do some tough love. I had one of my team members call me the other day, and she was talking about somebody she's working with. She's like, I see so much potential in this woman. She's got all these great appointments. She's got doctors who want to work with her. I'm trying to work with her. She never shows up for the appointments, right? This is common. You hear it a lot. So I started chuckling to myself because, again, I was kind of preparing for this segment, and I'm like, well, you know what the situation is, right? She goes, what? I'm like, she doesn't think she's worthy of success. She's making excuses because success is happening with or without her, for her, and it doesn't fit her view of herself. So she is in self-sabotage mode. So I said to this partner of mine, you have two options here. You can let her walk away, she's going to quit, or you can confront her with it in a loving way. And you can say to her, I see what you're doing. You might not be able to see it. You have all this potential. You've met all these great contacts. They want to get started with you. You are the one holding you back. When are you going to drop the excuses so you can be as successful as I know you can? Right? Well, as I had this conversation with my partner, she starts crying. Are you saying that to me? Or are you saying it to the other girl? I'm like, well, is this resonating with you? Right? It's common. We are our own obstacles. Okay? That doesn't need to be that way. We can get over it. I know all of you can. But we work with teammates. And so whether we're talking about ourselves or we're talking about them, we have to be good at identifying what are people's strengths and weaknesses and how do we coach them through it. So the next segment I want to talk about a little bit has to deal with these personality types, because you're going to come across all different kinds of people with all different kinds of lenses and all different types of personalities. The best thing about working with our business is that we get to work with people. The hardest thing about working with our business is we have to work with people, right? Sometimes we mesh really well with people, and other times it's really difficult to work with people. Why? We might just have conflicting personalities. I like having the people that I work with do a personality profile. I encourage them to use this one, which is called the DISC personality profile, but there's lots of different personality profiles that you can look at. We're going to take a couple minutes and share with you 4 main personality types and how their personalities can control or dictate how they view the business and what kind of information they might need to be successful. So let's talk about somebody that's under the DISC scale. Well, let me just go back for a second and I'll show you on here. So how was I introduced to this? I was in a health professional's office one day and I was sitting there waiting for my appointment, and there were some pharmaceutical recruiters also waiting to talk to the doctor. They were sitting there as part of they're waiting for their meeting with the doctor, and I was waiting for the meeting with the doctor. So we strike up conversation. What do you do? What do you do? Well, I start telling them about what we do. We're sitting there for a while. They start saying, well, we're looking to expand. So they're trying to now recruit me to come work as a pharmaceutical rep. Now, in the meantime, I'm already working with corporate to help create training materials for nutraMetrix. So I'm like, I'd love to see how the pharmaceutical reps train their people. The pharmaceutical companies train their people. So we create this agreement where I want to go evaluate their training to see if I want to work with them or not. So they let me come sit in for 2 weeks of their training. The first day, what they were talking about was how to identify the personality types of the doctors they were working with, so they knew how to detail the doctors with the right amount of information. So before you could go to this training, they had you do a personality type. So they sent me the link. It was an online thing, and it told me what my personality profile is and how to communicate with people of other different personality types. Well, I found out through that process I'm what they call a high I, right? So I fall right about here on the DISC scale on this circle. So you'll see there's 4 different types of people here. There's dominant people, influential people, steady people, and compliant people. D-I-S-C. Now, you'll see other analogies for those words with D's, I's, S's, and C's, but that's really kind of the gist of it. The dominant people tend to be very results-oriented, they're very direct, and they're very competitive. The influential people tend to be very enthusiastic and social and friendly. Where's that word social keep coming up in my life, right? But when we take a look at dividing this circle in half, the people above the line tend to be outgoing, and the people below the line tend to be a little bit more reserved. They're not quite as social. If we divide it from left to right, the people on the left tend to be very task-oriented, and the people on the right tend to be very people-oriented. So with me being influential, I'm outgoing and people-oriented. They like to take control of the conversation, right? They like to make strong statements. They like to talk about themselves. They'll cut you off. They'll talk over you. A lot of people that are not dominant tend to see dominant people as rude or aggressive. They're not rude or aggressive. They just have a different communication style than other people do. Right? Then if we have people that are, if we look at their body language, they're very firm in their handshake. They tend to be snappy dressers. They like to be able to show off their success. Oftentimes they'll have pictures around their office of them with influential people or showing that they've been successful. So the doctor that I work with in Miami, who is definitely a high D, he has a picture of himself ringing the New York Stock Exchange. He has pictures of himself with celebrities all over the place. He paid a designer to come in and showcase very expensive artwork in his practice. His practice is gorgeous. He drives very expensive vehicles. He wears very expensive watches. When you see him, you know he has arrived. His partner, on the other hand, who makes just as much money as he does, has a different personality type, has the same amount of wealth, does not display it the same way. When you go into his office is much more comfortable, it's much more relaxed, it's not as designer-ish. He wears, the first doctor does not ever wear a lab coat. The other doctor does. He covers up his clothes. It doesn't matter to him what his clothes look like. Right? He's much more personable with his patients. He takes a lot more time with his patients. He discusses things with his patients in much more detail because he's a different personality type. Now, let's take a look at the influential person. Could also be called inspiring, influencing, interactive, involved. These people like to tell stories and give anecdotes and metaphors. These people share their personal feelings. These people are a little animated when they talk. Okay, they can be a little dramatic. They like to talk in terms of feelings. They share how they're feeling with others. They're talkative. They can get distracted easily. They use a lot of hand and body movements. Do you see how once you recognize this, you can recognize people, like once you understand this, you can recognize people right away. When you're talking to somebody that's influential, it's easy to get them off track because they want to chat. I have to be very careful of this when I'm out working with health professionals because I know if I go in for a 15-minute appointment and I'm meeting with another influential health professional, we're going to talk for 2 hours. And their office manager is going to hate me and they're going to come try to drag me out of the office because she and I are like, Here's something else that's interesting about the interactive health professional. They really care about other people's feelings, and sometimes they won't tell you no because they don't want to threaten or damage the relationship with you, even if they just met you. So I've had influential health professionals string me along from meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, even when unconsciously they weren't interested in what we had to offer. But they like interacting with people, so they kept booking appointments, right? How about the supportive, stable, sweet, steady? This person is also people-oriented. They're a little bit slower to make their decisions. They're not as spontaneous as the influential, personable person. They ask a lot of questions. They listen more than they talk. They reserve their opinion. They're steady and even-tempered. They speak in a soft voice. They like to listen. Their office is usually decorated in warm tones. They wear subdued colors. They prefer conventional vehicles. Okay, going back here, talking about vehicles, influential people also like their vehicles and their clothes to be a little flashy, right? So both the D's and the I's tend to be flashier in their dress, flashier in their jewelry, flashier in their cars, and flashier in their office decor. The S's and the C's don't care about the visual stuff quite as much, not as flashy. Okay, the steady person, their environment is very comfortable. They want to make sure people feel safe and secure. They probably don't change things very much, right? So their office decor might need some updating. It's probably not 1970s, but it might be 1990s. Okay? They have family pictures around. They're very people-oriented, so you'll see that they're personable. They will like to have conversation with you, but they're much more detail-oriented when it comes to facts and figures. So the influential person is chatty, but still high level. The steady person is talkative, but they want detail. They want very thorough conversation. They might ask questions about quality control. They might ask questions about the science that the influential person would not ask. Okay? The cautious or calculating or competent person, very careful. I worked with a doctor up in Allentown, Pennsylvania. He's been in practice since 1971. He has not updated anything in his practice since 1971. The decor looks exactly the same way it does from the day he opened his practice. All of the pictures in his practice are of his children when they were very, very young, and they are all in their 40s and 50s now, okay? He hasn't even changed out the pictures of his kids. I swear he still wears the same polyester suit that he wore in 1973. He talks about, kind of like Al Bundy, you know, where Al Bundy used to talk about the one football game where he scored a touchdown and he was still talking about it like 25 years later. This doctor talks about things that he did 25, 30 years ago as if they happened yesterday. He's very slow to make decisions. He wants to see every piece of scientific information before he will make a decision, but once he commits to it, he's on board 100%. He will not change his mind again. He still drives like a 1982 Volvo. Why? Safe, secure, stable, reliable car. Okay? When you understand personalities, it can make a huge difference in how you communicate with people. But here's the scary part about that. Talking about our lenses, we tend to view the world through the lens that we have, and we think everyone views the world the same way. So if we are one of the people that's, let's say, for example, an S or a C, and we need a lot of information to make a decision, we're going to automatically assume that the people we're working with also need a lot of information to make a decision. But if we are an S or a C, and we go in and we present a ton of detailed information to a D, they're going to kick us out of the office because we're probably going to talk slow. We're probably going to give them all this detail, and what they want is fast, to the point, high level. Do you see how learning about this could improve your closing ratio? Because it helps you meet people where they are. It helps you communicate with people in a way that they can understand, in a way that they operate. So I gave you some slides. These are really more for when you get home to review. Types of questions that somebody might ask if they're one of these types of health professionals. So give me for the example, when I met with a doctor in Miami who was extremely high D, he didn't care what the products were. He wanted to know that his patients would be okay on them, and he wanted to know how much money he could make. What was the bottom line, and what do I need to do? If I tried giving him detail, he'd be like, and then his partner would come to the training, right? Because his partner was more an S than a D. He needed more of the science. He also spent a lot more time educating the patients on the product. The first doctor was like, you need to take this because I'm telling you, you need to take this. Okay? The steady doctor, what if it doesn't work? What's your track record of success? They're going to ask you about who else is doing this. Right? So will the influential person. What will my patients think? What's in it for me? Can we get together to discuss this over coffee? How many of you know somebody that when they call you or text you and say, can you talk for a minute? You're like, oh my God, it's going to be an hour. Right? That's probably an influential person. Right? So those questions are there for you to take a look at when you get home. But I think it's really helpful for this. I have one other little section that this is just for fun. You see, you can do the disc analysis online. It's going to cost you about $50 or $60. We don't sell it. We have no affiliation with the company. It's an investment I suggest that you make in learning more about yourself so that you know what your communication style is. And you will play ball and fetch all day long without saying, sure, I will get that for you, but if I can get you to answer to your question, are you ready to get started now? Right? Retrievers will let people play with them forever and never close the deal. I know some of you can relate to that. I can see it by the look on your face. Okay? What about the poodle? The poodle in sales dog is somebody that's super well connected. They know everybody. They say, I'm going to be huge in this, blah, blah, blah. I know everything. I don't need to learn the way that you do it. I'm going to do it my way. Right? You know some of those? Right? And they end up not being successful because they don't actually take the time to do the work. Because they think because they know everybody, it's just going to happen automatically. Right? What about the Chihuahua? Chihuahua is the person that is just like, they go after people with all these facts and figures and facts and figures and facts and figures, and they throw so much information at them whether the person asked for it or not. Right? And a lot of people are like, oh my goodness, would you just stop talking? Would you just stop? And if we don't learn how to control that, I mean, Chihuahuas can be great, right? When they're under control. So we have to learn, if we are a Chihuahua, how to harness that energy and match it to the people we're working with. Okay? What about the pit bull? I missed some. Wait, go back. Go back. How did I go back through all them? Then you have the Basset Hound. Just look at those sad eyes. The Basset Hound just oozes desperation. I need you for my business. I will never be successful unless you buy this product for me and come to this meeting with me. Right? This is the person that has like 5 names on their names list, and they call those same 5 people over and 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 over. Is this annoying yet? And over and over again. Right? Because they're so desperate, they're so hung up on helping that one person, they don't realize that there's all these other people out there that are looking for them. Then there's the pit bull that comes on so strong that says, you need to do this, blah, 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 and they like latch onto people. And did you ever see different dogs of different breeds interact? Doesn't always turn out well. Same thing with sales styles. If you're the pit bull and you're going up against the retriever, it's not going to go very well. So what we need to figure out how to do is to become, there's the big dog also. This is the person that comes up to me at every training and says, I'm going to bring on my local hospital. I don't want to work with these individual practitioners. I'm only going to work with the hospital. And they don't realize that in the time it takes them to bring on the hospital, they could have brought on 10 other practices, put 5 in one leg, 5 in another leg, had an equal business driving volume upside both legs of their organization, making consistent commission checks. No, the guy that's going to find the hospital is going to take 3 years to bring the hospital on. All of that volume is going to be on one side of their business, and we get paid on a 2-sided business, right? Now, some of you might lead to a hospital, and that might work as long as you are aware that you need to work with the individual accounts also to balance it all out, and that you don't just focus on the hospital, that in the 3 years it takes you to bring the hospital on, you still bring on the 10 additional accounts, right? What we really want to be is a super mutt. We want to be able to be a pit bull when we need to. We want to be able to be a retriever when we need to. We need to be able to get the facts and figures when we need to, but to be able to match them to the person we're talking to and meet them where they are. We also want to find out what drives people. They were talking about this from the stage earlier today. Sarah was talking about some of the practices that you meet when you sit down with them. They're going to be all about the numbers, no matter what personality type they might be. They just might really need financial help at the moment. So their whole goal might be about the financial picture. Or you might find somebody that's totally altruistic and says, probably because they feel like they're not worthy of success, I don't care about the money. I just want to help my patients. Wherever they are, you need to figure out what that motivation is. You see, this is a people business, guys. So being a student of people is just as important as being a student of this business. Wouldn't you agree? Was this helpful for you? Okay. Did you enjoy today?